Good morning, everybody. Hope you're well. Thank you very much for your time and effort today. Thank you also to the Britannic team for allowing me to share this with you. And so what I wanted to talk to you about is about delivering a truly exceptional customer experience with digital transformation going on. So Avaya conducted through IDC, who are a global leader in, or a global player in digital influencing, some research around digital transformation and the effect that that's having on customer experience, not only in our customers, but also our customers' customers as well. And what we found from the research was that probably everybody's going through some kind of digital transformation. Almost every IT initiative has got some sort of digital transformation sort of brand attached to it. But what is digital transformation? Well, depending on who you ask, you're likely to get multiple definitions, but I think the essence is still pretty much the same. Avaya defines digital transformation as the modernization of an organization's entire business communications infrastructure, so that the business can more easily and quickly take advantage of new and modern technologies such as AI, IoT, and possibly even blockchain as well, to help them create better, faster, more intuitive experiences, not only for their customers, but their employees as well. And I appreciate there's lots of other definitions out there, but I think what's really important about it is about organizations leveraging the technology to fundamentally enable and transform their business, would be able to respond to customers quicker, to be able to respond to market pressures quicker, and actually become a market leader rather than a follower. So what we found out was, when the organizations were kind of researched, was that around 69% of organizations found that digital transformation was less than extremely successful for them, and that around about 19% of them were finding that really they weren't disrupting. Only 19% of them were actually seeing some disruption in the market through digital transformation. But that's okay, because digital transformation is a journey, and some of those factors are in place because they're quite early on in the journey. If they're only transforming their technical infrastructure, their communications architecture at the moment, they haven't fully realized where the disruption in the marketplace is going to come from. So with that in mind, as it's a journey, some experts are saying that organizations aren't actually going to reach the end of their digital transformation program until maybe 2020, some maybe 2023. But that's okay, because it's giving organizations the opportunity to get it right and actually continue to utilize new technology that's coming in to help them make digital transformation a success. So we asked ourselves, what is the number one driver of digital transformation? Now, we often think that it's customer experience that's the number one driver and the number one competitive differentiator going forward. But interestingly, the response we got back was actually, it was about employee productivity, employee efficiency. And that's exactly what it's all about, really, because if you're making your employees smarter, able to deal with customers more effectively, then it follows through that your customer experience should actually be driven higher as well. Helps kind of underpin the stats on the previous slide around the effect of the disruption. So what we've layered in here is the revenue growth aspect of this. So if you look at increasing employee productivity, actually has a 30% impact on revenue growth of an organization. And we all know that customer experience generally, if you're doing it right and you're doing it really, really well, will have a far greater impact on your revenue growth as well. But when you look at responding to competitors and disruption with digital transformation, because of the maturity of where organizations are in their digital transformation and where they are with technology, the revenue growth is not quite there yet. It's quite low. So that's why we're seeing that as, you know, that 19% figure. What's also interesting is if you think about digital transformation being used to drive down cost, actually, whilst it is one of the primary drivers, that cost element actually is not delivering the revenue growth required by organizations or needed by organizations is pretty low. So those organizations that are using digital transformation to drive down growth are in effect slower and less able to execute than those that are putting productivity of employees and customer experience first. So, given that the ultimate goal for digital transformation is, or should be, customer experience, and given that most of you in this room should be and are probably focused on it, what do consumers base their buying decisions on, and how do they evaluate customer experience? Well, the answer is absolutely everything and anything. In fact, it's probably easier to say what they don't, identify what they don't want. Consumers seem to rate great customer experience on the following in terms of ease of, or who to do business with, in terms of ease of finding the products and services, high quality service, and those things coupled together are generally what is inherent in the fabric of the front office, the contact center. However, what's interesting, the third factor, is a timely delivery. Now, how many of us in the contact center or in the front office actually have control over that? Or how many of us actually have those metrics applied to the contact center when customers say, well, I want my product delivered on this day or in 2 days' time, whatever it is. So this bit is really about how you kind of take what's more seen as a back office function, bringing that forward into the front office when you're looking at this big sort of digital transformation umbrella. So then you look at factors that create the great experience for those customers. Now, we're talking about all this great stuff around improving and driving and being excellent at customer experience. However, it always comes back down to one thing, and that's price. We've known that for years. Customers will generally buy on price, but very closely coupled to that is customer service. They demand high levels of customer service. That is what's going to refer us, to their friends, to their families. Price is always going to be number one, but that is also going to be very closely coupled by the customer service. What's interesting, though, is some of us are still getting it wrong. We're not getting some of the basics right. So you look at how we measure first contact at the moment is in the traditional channels, the voice, web chat, email. Some of that isn't working to how customers want. We need to get that core foundation working well. Digital transformation will support that, and I'll touch on that in a second, but that is fundamentally how customers and consumers are measuring us today. 42% of issues and transactions are not being resolved in that first opportunity, that first contact with the customer. And 1 in 4, 1 in 5 customers are stating that it's because it's taking too long, I'm not talking to the right person, it's not easy to resolve the issue. All of those things are compounding into that 42% of transactions not being dealt with in the first contact. Now, going back to the digital transformation bit, if we get that piece right around the digital channels, blending with human channels, that allows us to be able to get that piece right, because we can easily start to look at what the customer can do in a digital channel, that when the handover to an agent or an associate is required, the experience feels seamless and the context is there for the experience to actually be driven higher. Even though the customer may be still phoning up with a complaint, you're actually sort of using digital transformation to make that customer experience a lot better. So what I'd like to share with you is some use cases around how we can get this right in terms of organizations, what they should consider around transforming customer experience. So I talked a little bit about digital and human, the blending of the two together. Now there's obviously talk about whether or not will one replace the other. No, it won't. Not in totality is my personal view, and I think most people would agree with that. Human touch is still required. Organizations recognize that. Human touch is required because all of these customers want that human touch if they have those challenges. Let's face it, if you've got a financial query in your bank balance, you've got an issue, or you've got a complaint, you want to return a product, something that's highly emotive, there's a lot of sentiment attached to it, you really don't want to deal in a digital channel. You want to be able to speak to somebody. However, how you're then managed through a customer experience process to speak to that person could be a blend of the two. It is about getting the balance right. And what is interesting, in the research, we found that 33% of organizations are finding it difficult to get that blend right. And that could be, some subtle things, whether it be the context being provided to the agent or the associate on why the customer is in contact, why the customer's gone through that digital channel. The flip side is 67% of organizations believe they are getting it right. But I think, you've got to look at the subtleties there. You've got to look at, well, what are we using the digital channels for? If we're using the digital channels to help the agents deliver a far better service to customers, then yes, that is true. So the use case I'd like to go through for one of our customers in the Middle East, Cara Jewelers. Now, Cara are the largest bespoke and fine jewelers in the Middle East. And when I say bespoke fine jewelry, sadly for me, they're tens of thousands of pounds, not something I can afford, but they offer a very unique experience to their customers. Now, it's not to say that that is, should be an experience that a lot of retail organisations couldn't take from. So what Cara wanted us to do with them was actually help them start a customer experience in the digital domain using social media. So using their social media web page, their Facebook page rather, and using social media messenger, Facebook Messenger rather, we developed a chatbot that we called CaraBot, which through notifications, through likes, or however the customer, the consumer has liked and triggered Cara to reach out to them, actually brings the customer in through Facebook Messenger, and the customer is actually able to interact with CaraBot. And what this allows is, it allows context to be shared. So CaraBot has been set up to ask the customer, what are they interested in? What items of jewelry are they interested in? Do they have a particular type of jewelry in mind in terms of stones, metals, etc.? All the time gathering information, asking the customer questions. What the customer is then able to do is, through the chatbot, using that information and pushing content to the customer is then able to actually choose on something they're interested in. So on that next actionable insight, the chatbot is then able to say, right, the customer's made a choice here. I will push them a URL to the web page that has that particular product on, and that will actually allow them to look at it in more detail and to be able to perhaps talk to an associate. That all happens seamlessly. So the customer then is routed to a web page, and they then have the option to continue the web chat, as it were, with an associate. So this is live, but the associate, in the meantime, has got the context. If the customer says yes, they've got the context of being able to do that. So the agent knows exactly what the customer is looking for, why the customer wants to talk to them. And if that's a subject matter expert, then it can be anything about the piece of jewelry. Now, the next part of this that Cara are particularly interested in, bearing in mind this is an associate, not an agent, they're using a mobile app because they're in a retail environment. The customer is then able to choose whether or not they have a video call with that associate. And this is all seamless within the app. So they then can have a video call with the associate, get to know them, get to find out whether or not that piece of jewelry is in stock, where the associate is, etc., and allow the associate to then book an appointment for them. So an incredibly powerful way of blending the two together, giving a customer both a digital and a human experience. And actually there's two other stages to this, but the other stage I wanted to touch on very, very quickly is that being what they are and the environment they're in, Cara actually offer customers a limo service. So they will actually schedule a limo to come and pick you up from your hotel and take you to the store where your jewelry and the subject matter expert is on that jewelry. That is part of this journey. So the customer can then get almost an Uber-style experience through the same application that Cara are delivering about when they can expect the limo, who the driver is, if they're stuck in traffic, see exactly where they are using GPS, etc. So absolutely blending, taking in and out of digital and human, the ability for the customer to have a seamless experience. However, transformation continues to be siloed. We focus on customer experience, and a big degree of customer experience, as I mentioned earlier, is in the back office. It can only be as good as what we do in the back office. And the third most important criteria that customers have in their buying decision is timely delivery following their purchase. Now, only 28% of organizations who integrate well can genuinely say that they have that high level of customer experience integrated between their back office and the front office. And many organizations don't see the back office as being integral to the customer experience. But as I said earlier, how many of you take into consideration when we look at the contact center and all the metrics that we measure a contact center by, how often do we take all those elements in the back office and feed that in to give us that complete customer experience? So using that as a use case, another customer, a global white goods appliance manufacturer, wanted to essentially use that integration, embedded communications within the back office to make their post-sales engagements with their customers a lot better, a lot more seamless, a lot quicker. So again, using a mobile application, customers were able to register their faults through the mobile app, give context into the app as to obviously the model, what the problem was, what they believed the problem was, any sort of evidence of what the issue was, for that then to be routed into the engineering organization, not the contact center, but the engineering organization of this particular manufacturer. With all that context, what the organization is then able to do is look at which engineers are close by, how quickly can we get that engineer to the customer. Customers sent an SMS text message notifying them of who the engineer is, when the engineer is going to arrive. All great stuff. The engineer gets to site and realizes that perhaps they actually need some further assistance and expert help. Now, the next part of the journey within the app, but this time from the engineer's perspective, is taking the context that they've received from the customer and feeding that into a remote specialist that they can then contact via video again with the customer at the customer site, so they can actually show the remote specialist what is going on and what they believe the issue to be and to get further guidance. So again, using all that rich context that's available, the specialist is then able to tell the engineer what they believe the issue to be and what the part might be that they need. Now, either we can close this down because the engineer's got that part, or the engineer is then able to schedule a time that they can go back to the customer with the necessary part and fix the problem. The important thing is all of that context is kept. So if there's an additional problem that can be used to help fault find the next time around, it also gives the customer the ability to feed back on the experience as well. So we said embedding communications is essential. And virtually all the organizations we spoke to and agreed with that and basically stated it's important to extremely important. And just a useful snippet of information, 66% of major healthcare incidents generally tend to be down to communication process breakdowns. That's where, you know, a situation arises and people, you know, nurses, doctors need to bring other folks in to support an emergency situation. A lot of the time, that's because they don't have those embedded communications across the organization to help them manage those situations effectively. On that, probably one of the most significant use cases is eCall, which is an emergency service scenario that's been deployed in Portugal, Italy, France, and Belgium, I believe, and we're in a very appropriate situation here. There's a lot of information that's available within vehicles today, sensors, IoT-enabled devices, etc. Now, what this particular use case has allowed us to do is to use that information, the telematics, to trigger a workflow into an eCall alert into a call center. Send the available context through from the vehicle in terms of where the vehicle is, how many occupants, what the severity of the crash is by the number of airbags going off, etc., and provide that context so the urgency of the situation can be assessed. If it's appropriate for the call handler to then speak to the occupants of the car as the car is communications enabled. using additional context, whether or not it be a dash cam, get visuals on the situation, perhaps even deploy a drone to assess whether or not there are any fuel or oil spillages on the road, and then trigger the next part of the workflow, which is then about bringing the appropriate emergency units together. So this isn't about necessarily getting 5, 6, 7 appliances on site to deal with it. It's about the emergency services having a coordinated effort to deal with the situation as it arises. So it's a much more efficient and it's a much quicker response to the situation based on real information that we're getting from both the vehicle and hopefully the occupants as well. So it's an interesting one. Technology does improve customer experiences. What's the next big thing? Consumers are open and willing to using technology. We know that. We do it at home all the time. In fact, what we do at home often drives what we want to try and do in the workplace as well. We talk about IoT, we talk about AI, we talk about chatbots, etc. But what is the next big thing? Well, it's going to be an evolution of some of that stuff. And we're looking at things like virtual assistants, for example, in the home, Amazon Echo, Google Assistants, etc. They all have a role to play in customer experience. They will have an increased role to play in customer experience. And organizations that have got an open architecture through their digital transformation to bring those additional channels in, that additional technology in, will succeed because they've done that through their digital transformation. They've built on the foundation they've already got. Of course, it's going to be a subject for debate because if we look at self-driving vehicles, for example, there's a huge debate as to whether the AI is going to make the right decisions based on how it's been programmed to deal with certain accident situations. But there is no clear winner, I think. I think it's just going to be as and when organizations feel they need to adopt it because their consumers and customers will tell them. What's really interesting, and this is sort of personal view of mine, we've done a lot of work with virtual assistants, building skills in things like Amazon Alexa, to be able to start a customer journey through that virtual assistant into the contact center. I think that is going to grow. I think that's going to become more prevalent. And the reason I think that is because we articulate so much more when we speak than if it's text-based or it's data-based. Our emotions, our sentiment can be detected. I'm not saying it's something that's here and now, but it will evolve. And that will help organizations to understand perhaps more in greater detail why customers are getting in touch, rather than having to go through a data-based digital channel. So I do think we're going to see more and more virtual assistants. I think the number in the US at the moment is 40% of households have Amazon Echo devices. And of that 40%, around 30–35% of consumers are actually using those Amazon Echoes to shop. So they're using Alexa and the skills built within Alexa. And that's still the thing we will have to think about. We have to create those skills. We have to create those intents, as we do with the chatbot, to drive the right customer experience. This is why it's all that clever blending of digital and human. We create that to drive the right customer experience, but it's being done. And it's being done well. Which leads me on to the Avaya proposition. Now you know Avaya, hopefully you all know Avaya from its heritage, its rich heritage of voice communications, over 100 years, and being at the forefront of the contact center technology, unified communication solutions. What we've done over the last few years is brought that together into a consolidated, seamless foundation, if you will, to support all of those key areas. People still like to use telephones, they still like voice, therefore that will always be a part of the fabric. Voice will never ever go away. But in order to make sure that we've got this routing connectivity, Avaya has developed that intelligent routing to blend that voice experience, create omni-channel experience on top of that, bring in mobility as well as collaboration to create that seamless experience for you and your customers. That routing connectivity has evolved, so recently it's become attribute-based routing, not intelligent routing or skills-based routing. So the attribute is the skill of the individual, not necessarily the skill of the team. So it's not whether or not they've got an ability to write an email in the right way, it's whether or not they've got the attributes to deal with a customer who has a specific problem, or they have a specific skill around customer retention, whatever it might be. That's what the attribute is. So around all of that common platform, that common foundation, we've created this process automation layer. And what that's allowed us to do, because we've built a lot of this up on an open-based architecture, so using RESTful APIs, web-based services, we've created this automation layer that allows organizations on a digital transformation path to seamlessly bring in this new technology that will help them transform their business and help them increase, maintain their customer experience, whether that be through snap-ins, so applications that will help create workflows, that automate communications processes within applications, such as Salesforce or Microsoft Dynamics, to our own chatbot, Ava, which some of you may have used on our support portal. Ava isn't new. Ava's been around for about 8 years now, but it's evolved over that time. It's got better. It's a cloud-based AI solution that actually allows unparalleled integration not only into a contact center platform, so we're giving organizations the opportunity to blend very well that digital and human interaction. So there's integration into those contact center platforms, but also integration into social media as well. So you have that platform to then look at Facebook Messenger or Twitter, even I hear perhaps WhatsApp as well, because they've always been very closed about their APIs. So that process automation layer has given us an amazing opportunity to provide you with a number of different capabilities around bringing in IoT, bringing in CRM integration, being able to data mine, being able to bring in blockchain capability as well into a seamless foundation. So the new Avaya, open, agile, business-driven, use case-driven. It's not about us going to you with a use case, a solution to a problem you might not have. This is about you presenting a use case that we can help you find answers to. And with that, thank you very much.